When you work with Excel, occasionally you're going to bump into some things that don't work quite the way you think they should. And believe it or not, sometimes the Find and Select button is exactly what you want to use. But you may not have even looked at it because it seems like you know most of that stuff already. Hi, I'm Terry, one of the Consumer Technology Specialists for Mid-Continent Public Library. And today we're going to look at that Find and Select button and look at some of the things that you may have been missing that could be an answer to that really kind of quirky problem that you need to address and you're just not quite sure how to do it. So let's get started with Find and Select. For our first example today, we are in a contacts list of some kind. Our tab at the bottom left says that these are customers. So it's a good possibility that I have a list of companies that are my customers, and these are the contacts that I'm usually in conversation with. And this gives me their names, their addresses, and that'd be the company addresses probably, and then the phone numbers that I can use to reach them. Now this is a really small example. The larger the example or the larger the spreadsheet that you are using, the more you're going to appreciate these particular tools. Right now, this is small enough that anything we do today, we could probably just look at the spreadsheet and come up with the answers. But if you have 1,000 records, or if you have 500,000 rows in a spreadsheet, then all of a sudden, these tools become amazingly helpful. All right, so let's say that we're here at the top of our spreadsheet and we decide that we want to find all of the companies, all of the contacts who can be found in Blue Springs. Well, that's easy enough to do. On the Home tab in Excel, I can come over to the right to the Editing group and then go to the right-hand side of that group where we have Find and Select. Click that drop-down arrow, and our very first choice here is Find. Now, I can type in, say, Blue Springs, which makes sense. I could try to type in blue, but I suppose there could be a blue spruce that's a small town, or a blue willow that might be a small town. So I'm probably better off using the most unique part of an entry that will get me the best results and not give me a lot of extraneous information as well. So we'll go with Blue Springs, and then down at the bottom right I have two choices. One is Find Next and the other one is Find All. Well, we're going to do Find Next first. And Find Next is going to find the cells that contain Blue Springs, and it will just kind of jump me from cell to cell to cell that contains that particular information. So we'll click Find Next, and sure enough, here is Blue Springs in E4. I'll click Find Next again, and it takes me down to E9. Wow, that's pretty helpful. Okay, now I'll do Find Next again, and you'll find that occasionally Excel is going to loop through. It doesn't necessarily stop at the bottom. So you do need to kind of pay attention and make sure that you're not doubling your efforts here. Because if I do Find Next, then it goes to the bottom of that list yet again. I'm going to just simply close. But we did find Blue Springs. Now, it doesn't do anything else other than just find those entries. Well, let's say that we want to look at that other Find option. So let's go back to Find and Select, click on the button, go to Find, and this time when it says Find What, let's type in 640 because there are several zip codes that start with 640. And instead of Find Next, which is even the default, we'll go to the left of that and click on Find All. Now, with Find All, I need to kind of expand this out a little bit. I can see that there are several entries, and in fact, it's all of the cells that have the number combination of 640. So starting at the top of this list, we have 64013, 053, and 012. But it also picked up a phone number that had that same combination of numbers right here, 640, that is certainly not anything we're interested in. So you do have to pay attention a bit as to the cell reference, because that would tell you what column, for example, you are looking at, and that would make a difference. Well, let's then look at, say, this one. It's 64012. And notice that my mouse pointer becomes a hand with a pointy finger, which means this is a link. So I can click on that link and it takes me directly to that cell. So it's a really nice, fast way to find information and then actually go there and perhaps make a change or just simply look at the information because maybe you need to call that person. Who knows? But the thing is, it's very easy to do, and a lot of people really like this find all method when you go to find. Let's click close in this find and replace dialog box. And let's say that we do not only want to find an entry, but we want to fix it. We want to replace it in some way. So I'm going to go back up to the top because let's say that we know that Elizabeth Mills has had a name change. So we can go back to our find and select and do a replace this time. And it looks very much like find, except that we have an extra box here. So first of all, we want to find Mills, and then I can tab or use my mouse to click in the replace with box, and I can say, okay, I want to replace Mills with Smith. Now you'll notice that in the lower portion of this dialog box that to the left of Find Next and Find All, we now have Replace, and to the left of that, Replace All. Now, Replace All can be an amazing tool, but you have to really know your data, because it's possible that when you do a Replace All, that in the replacing, just like we had a phone number pop up when we were looking at zip codes, you could find some combination of characters that matches what you're trying to find, but in fact shouldn't be part of what you're replacing. And so you can end up with corrupted data if you're not careful when you use replace all. We're simply going to replace. Now here's another thing that we can do. We can simply go to Find Next to make sure that this is Elizabeth Mills and not Fred Mills, which in a large list we might have something like that. And then when I've confirmed that yes, this is the entry that I want to replace, I click on Replace, and look at that, Elizabeth's name has now changed. Really easy, isn't it? And then when I'm finished with that dialog box, I can, of course, close out. Well, let's do another example where I could find and select. And again, I want to replace. This time, I realized that I mistyped a phone number. So I know that it shows up in this list 4635, but I want to replace it with 4653. I just inadvertently transposed those numbers. So again, I would want to find next, just to make sure that it shows up in the phone number and it's not some sort of combination that also shows up in the zip codes, and then I can click on replace, and it has fixed that particular entry, and we can close. Find and replace is amazingly easy and can be such a big help in keeping your data accurate. I've moved to a different example spreadsheet where in this case we have statistics about a social media site where I post videos, and I'm interested in how successful the different videos are. So here we have like peak live views, and then how many people stick around for 3 seconds as opposed to a minute, and then how many minutes have actually been viewed during a premiere of that video, and then this is like today's date, and where are we now with those numbers, with the 3-second views, the minute views, and the total minutes viewed. And then we even have a chart over at the right that sort of shows us visually how those numbers play out. So just kind of an interesting way to display information and keep track of things that I want to keep track of. Well, let's say that I want to go to a particular cell. One of the ways that I can do that, if I know that cell name, is to go to Find and Select and go to the third choice, which is Go To. Now you could also use Control-G, the keyboard shortcut, but we're going to Go To, and it brings up a dialog box here, and yeah, we don't, A1 is where we are clicked right now. So let's go to, say, K10, because we're interested in that information, and I can press enter or click OK, and here is K10, which actually has no information, but maybe I'm looking at it for a formatting reason. Well, let's go back up to Find and Select, and let's go to, and now let's look at, say, D18, and click on OK, and it takes me to D and 18, and now that particular cell is selected. Well, let's try one more, and again, let's see what's going on. We'll go to Find and Select, we'll go to Go To. Now, as I go through this list, you'll notice that, see how it says Go To? So it keeps track of where I've been, so I could click even on A1, click on OK, and it takes me back to where I started. So it's kind of interesting that if I use Go To, I keep a history of the different cells that I've visited and looked at, perhaps worked on, and then I can go back to those very easily without having to, memorize or trying to remember where I was. It keeps a list for me. So that Control-G, or the Go To, can be very helpful. One other thing that I'd like to show you very quickly here is when I go to Go To, besides it keeping track of all of the different cells that I've been in, down at the bottom left it has a button that says Special. Now I can click on that button, or let me cancel. I can go to Find and Select, and the fourth choice in this little drop down is Go to Special, which is the same thing as clicking that button. Now the choices below Go to Special are some of the choices that we are going to see in Go to Special. So I'll be sure to point those out. But now let's go to Special and look at that and all of the choices that are available that you may not be aware of. So let's go to Special. And our first choice here is we can select any of the cells that have notes in them. So let's click OK. And here in B13, it's a little hard to see, but I have this green outline that, sure enough, a note is notated by a red triangle in the upper right. And when I rest my mouse on that, it shows what the note is. Now, if you have a whole lot of notes and a huge spreadsheet, this can really help you find what you're looking for and not miss something that's important. Well, let's go back to Find and Select then. Go down to Go to Special. And our second choice here is sort of interesting. It's constants. Now, constants could be defined as anything that you type into a cell that is not a formula. So let's look for the constants, click OK, and sure enough, everything that I have typed is highlighted, but the formulas down here are not highlighted. Well, let's go back to Find and Select, go to Special, and now let's do the opposite of the constants. Let's look for the formulas. And we have all sorts of different kinds of formulas that we could choose from. We're just going to take all of those and click OK. And now it shows me only where the formulas are. Well, let's go back to Find and Select, go to Special, and then this is something that is very important from time to time, finding blanks, because blanks can interfere with some of your formulas. It could be that blanks are showing up and maybe it's just that you're looking for, say, social security numbers and one didn't get typed in, or you're looking for somebody's last name and it didn't get typed in. So it is a way to validate and verify information and make sure that you've not made mistakes. It's a great way to troubleshoot and double check is to look for blanks. And when we click OK, well, let me click up here a little bit because I was evidently off of the spreadsheet. Let's go back to Special. Let's look for blanks. Click OK. Yes. And so now it's kind of interesting here. The cells in row 2 are showing blank. Now I've merged D, E, and F, for example. So D and F are blank. So even though I do have a word in that merged cell, it's showing that the cells around where I've done the merging are blank. It shows then also that E7 is blank, and that might be something that I would want to go back and investigate. Something else that we might want to look at from time to time is what is the region of this spreadsheet? Because occasionally, especially if you're sharing this spreadsheet or you've inherited this spreadsheet, people will have put entries in. Maybe they even think that what they've put in should be hidden, or maybe they've even put it in and then deleted it. But for whatever reason, especially if we're talking about formatting, the formatting gets stuck, and then Excel sees your overall spreadsheet as much larger than it maybe really is. And then that can kind of mess with your formatting from time to time. Sometimes it even will cause your formulas to be a little confused as well. So let's go back up to A1 and just click, and then let's go to our Find and Select, go to Special, and let's find out what the current region is of this spreadsheet. We'll click OK. And the only thing that's a little confusing is, yes, all of row 1 is part of that spreadsheet, but it's the active cell, so it's showing up as white instead of having the gray background that the rest of the cells have. Well, there's one other thing that I would like to look with this particular spreadsheet. So let's go back to Find and Select, go down to Go to Special, and then down at the bottom left we have Objects. So this could be shapes that we've drawn in, it could be a text box potentially, or it could be a chart. So again, the larger the spreadsheet, the larger the area that you need to scroll through to find what you're looking for, the more that Go to Special can really be of great assistance. Well, let's click on Objects, click OK, and now look here, it has found our chart that otherwise, and depending on the size of the spreadsheet, might have been harder to find. I've switched over to another example spreadsheet that's really just a copy of the video stats. And let's now look at the second column of options when we go to Special. And we're going to start by, of course, going to Find and Select and go to Special. And as we look at the first choices here, row differences and column differences, what these do is, let's say that I click on a cell and it has, say, a 4 in it. Well, it will look at the row where I've clicked, and it will look for the cells that have a value that is not a 4. Same thing here, column differences, except that, well, it's in a column. So you're basically doing the opposite of finding duplicates. I'm wondering if this isn't a very rare kind of instance, so we probably won't look at that. Precedence and dependence, I believe, show up better when we go to the Data tab and look at a special button there. So we're going to skip over those for today, except to say that a precedent is a cell that goes into a formula. So let's say that I have A1 plus B1 and I'm in another cell to get the answer. The precedents are the A1 and the B1 that feed into that formula. Now the dependents are just the opposite. So I would say, I would click in A1 and I would say, okay, now tell me where the formulas are where A1 is included. Those can be very helpful, but again, I think you can see them easier and visually if we go to the Data tab, so watch for that video in the future. So let's go down to last cell, and this again, because of how Excel occasionally holds on to formatting that you may not even be able to see, if you click on last cell and click OK, then here it shows me that the last cell that Excel is seeing within this spreadsheet is I-17, which is what I would want it to be. But then let's go back to Find and Select, go to Special. Visible cells only is something that we're going to come to just a little bit later, so let's look for conditional formats. So on your Home tab in Excel, you can create rules for conditional formatting. So let's click on that, click OK, and it shows me that the cells that are contained within a rule for conditional formatting are H4 through H15, and then you can even kind of see that some of those cells have some highlighting because they meet those particular conditions. Now let's click back in our spreadsheet. We'll go to Find and Select, go to Special, and the other thing here is data validation. So that is something else that you can do where you can say, I would like for all of the cells within a particular range to be, say, larger than 1 but less than 10. And if somebody types a number that doesn't meet those conditions, then I want to set up some sort of a rule, a text box that pops up that says, oops, this isn't valid. So if I set up some data validation, let me click OK, and it shows me that I have set up some sort of a rule here in column C where it looks like these are all valid because I don't see any kind of an error message, but they need to be within a particular range of numbers, and they have to be numbers to be valid for this particular column. Well, let me go back up to A1. And let's think about what happens when we do this Find and Select and go to Special and we want to find visible cells only. When would we use that? Well, let me cancel out of here and let me show you an example. Let me hide row 5. Let me hide row 10. And let's hide row 15. So they're kind of easy to remember. And you can even see here then that I have row 4 through 6, 9, 11, and then 14, 16. So what happens if I want to copy this information and then paste it? As I look down, I can see that I now have, oopsie, I'm not skipping the 2, the 7, or the 12. Let's look. I have all of the rows, and that happens when you hide rows or columns. If you copy and then paste that information someplace else, even the hidden information shows up. Well, let's undo, and let's keep row 5, row 10, and row 15 hidden. So as I look at the video numbers, that's 2, 7, and 12. But this time, first of all, let's select everything here. But let's go to Find and Select. Let's go to Special, Visible Cells Only. Click OK. Now I'm going to do a Control-C to copy, paste, Control-V, and now look at that. I'm missing video 2, video 7, and video 12, which is exactly what I wanted to do. It has kept the hidden rows hidden, and it has only copied and pasted the cells that I wanted to copy and paste. Now, this can save you so much time and energy and frustration simply by going to Find and Select, go to Special, and use Visible Cells Only. I've now moved up to the top of our spreadsheet, and along the way I've removed the copying and pasting from our last example because there is one other thing that I'd like to look at. And as we go to Find and Select and go all the way down to the bottom, noting that we have pretty much looked at everything in this drop-down, let's look at the selection pane because it is something you might not be familiar with. So let's click Selection Pane, and now I have this pane over on the right where it says we have comment 1, and it also says, because of that kind of Ghostbusters line going through the eye, that we can't really see it the way it is naturally. So if I click on comment 1, well, there it is. There's that comment that we found earlier. And then of course I could click on the eye again to turn it off and let it hide within its cell. We also have chart 1, so when I click on chart 1, it highlights not only chart 1, but it also selects the data that feeds into chart 1. Now here's the interesting thing. It also says we have oval 2. Well, I don't see an oval anywhere. And occasionally you may have some sort of an object that gets hidden behind another object. So what we're going to do is, first of all, I'm going to click on oval 2, and it shows me where the outline is here, sort of in column K, and it's right behind our chart. Maybe we started with one idea and then covered it with another idea, but we forgot to remove oval 2. So it's still there. But let's see if we can even see it. Let me go to chart 1 and click on the eye for it to turn off how we can see its visibility. And here then is oval 2. So then we need to decide, do we want to delete this? Do we want to move it? What do we want to do with this oval 2? But I have now found an object that was hiding behind another object. That could be very valuable to you from time to time, especially if you have a really large spreadsheet. If you have objects hiding behind other objects, if nothing else, they're just taking up file size that you might want to kind of minimize and explore a little bit. Well, let's turn chart 1 back on so that we can see that. And that is, for today, our Find and Select button. To learn even more, visit our mymcpl.org/online learning page, where you will find some really great online resources, which include Universal Class, LinkedIn Learning, and Learning Express Library. Tune in each week as we introduce new videos on a variety of tech topics. You can find us at 1 o'clock on Wednesday and Friday and 2 o'clock on Tuesday. Be sure to find us on Facebook at MCPL 360, or if you prefer, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at MCPLMO, where you can find our MCPL Consumer Technology Resources playlist.